Hi guys, it's April, and I have another book review for you. So sit back, relax, and let's do this. This book review is, of course, Over Everland by Wendy Spinale. I will do this review the same way I do all of my other reviews, as always, with the brief synopsis and spoil-free review first, followed by my spoiled-filled thoughts of everything. Just everything. I will, of course, let you know when that happens so you can leave and go away if you don't want to be spoiled. But if you're like me and like to peek at the Christmas presents before you open them, I won't judge you. I really won't. So Everland. Everland is a steampunk retelling of Peter Pan. It is the story of Gwen protecting her siblings after a war-torn London is devastated by some kind of deadly disease that seems to be wiping out all of the adults, leaving many an orphan in the city. It's a year since the war has started and London has fallen, and Gwen is just trying to survive. She's trying to keep her siblings, Joanna and Mikey, out of the hands of the marauders who are led by Captain Hook. The marauders are the ones who are ravishing the city, claiming the country for Germany. They are also rounding up all of the lost children in hopes for finding a cure for this disease that is spreading and continuing to spread. One day, little Joanna is captured and Gwen is now on a mission to get back her sister, and of course she runs into Pete and the Lost Boys. Like I said, this is a steampunk retelling of Peter Pan, which is why I was intrigued with the story to begin with, because I absolutely love the story of Peter Pan. This, of course, means I'm highly critical of retellings. I'm even more critical of retellings that stick extremely close to the original story and only tweaks a few things here or there, and that is what this story did. And unfortunately, I don't feel like it was done to the best of its ability. A lot of the Peter Pan felt like it was forced into a mold that it doesn't necessarily fit into. The great thing about Peter in the story of Peter Pan is that he is a young boy. So when he comes off cocky and he comes off bratty and he comes off a bit extreme, it's because he is a little boy, and children have these kind of moments where they're one way, they're another way, and then they're completely absent-mindedly off in another direction, completely forgetting about everything else. But when you try to make Peter a 17-year-old boy, those kind of qualities come off very poorly. So when retellings are switched and try to keep the essence of the story without thinking about how it will affect how the story is told, the characters suffer for it. I also had some issues with how things were renamed very obviously in this story. Part of me is like, couldn't you come up with something more clever than Pete Pan and Gwen Darling? It's like only one letter or one little nuance was tweaked to be like, haha, you have no idea who these people are, and that kind of grated me a little bit. And unfortunately, I didn't feel like the writing was quite up to par. It was very simplistic and very elemental, so it didn't really tell the story to the full capacity that I wanted it to, and the characters came off extremely one-dimensional as a result, which I will agree that in the original Peter Pan, this is true because you have so many casts of lost boys, but the writing in the original story is also very whimsical and supports that kind of narration, where this, I'm not entirely sure what it was trying to do, and I didn't care about anyone, unfortunately, because all of this seemed to be crammed into a time span of maybe 24 hours. I don't know when anybody slept or when anybody got cleaned up. We just kept going, and then people would come in, and I know it feels like I'm ranting on this story right now, and I agree, I am a little bit, but like I said, I'm highly critical when you do retellings like this that don't deviate and become something new from the story. Basically, all this story is taking the story of Peter Pan, plopping it in London, which didn't feel like London. It didn't feel right. It didn't sound right. It sounded a little bit like it would be me trying to explain what London is, even though I haven't been there very long, if that makes sense. And then after plopping the story in a steampunk London, tweaking the names a little bit, aging people up, changing some of the genders, but keeping the same exact plot. And not very well. I don't think it fit quite the way it was supposed to. There's just a lot of things that I think could have been done extremely well, but it just didn't come off. There was also the character of Captain Hook. We got his perspective and some of the things from his past, tried to make us a little sympathetic for his character, but in the end it just made me feel weird and a little awkward and a little annoyed all at the same time. It was like we were trying to get Hook to be a character we liked, but at the same time being a character we hate, but not pulled off very well. I love the concept of what this book could have been. I didn't really enjoy the execution. I had to force myself to read it. It's totally possible that other people will really truly enjoy this book, but I went through this story reading it wondering if this story was based off of the Disney or the original. And you can always tell the difference, and I felt more like Disney, and therefore it fell on several points, and then it wasn't really its own thing. In the end, there were some things I couldn't get over, and I just continued to just poke and pick and and that's not an enjoyable read when I do that. And so, unfortunately, this book suffered for it. So now I will go into some of my spoil-filled thoughts. I'm not going to go too into depth to this because I could probably be sitting here for hours saying these things at you and you guys would just get bored out of your mind with me. But let's start this. I mentioned a little bit in the other section about when you age Peter up, but you don't change some of those Peter Pan qualities to fit the new age he is located at. There were many points in this book where I questioned whether or not Peter was actually 17. Because like I said, he acted like a 12-year-old. He acted bratty, which is the Peter Pan character. He constantly switched moods, which is the Peter Pan character, but when you put that in a 17-year-old body, it comes out very poorly. It becomes a character that you just can't like. It's not a redeemable character at that point. And I hate when that happens to Peter, because Peter, his name's so close, I'm interchanging things. Peter is one of my favorite characters of Peter Pan. He's the whole reason the story exists. And so when you get him wrong, the whole thing falls apart. And I also want to know why he wasn't affected by the virus. A lot of the Lost Boys who were younger than him were already succumbing to this virus. And we know that this virus hits the older people faster. Something about being weak and only wanting the strongest soldier type people to survive. I had some issues with the virus and struggling with the explanations of a lot of things of the virus and how it hits different ages and different people in different speeds, especially the different genders. A lot of science stuff started going through my mind, and it's really bad when I am distracted by science and these kind of things, because then all joy of reading is lost, unfortunately. And of course, that led to the very awkward moment that I hated the most in this book, where Peter was starting to talk to Gwen saying, hey, you might be the only female left, so you might have to step up and do your duty. Did not know how to take that. No. Which leads me to another no moment. Hook and Gwen's mother. What was that? Tell me what that was. Hook has probably got the biggest mother complex I have ever seen in my life. I was completely grossed out by it. Couldn't do it. Nope. Had to move on. Nope. Yep, that was the thing. And finally, I'm gonna wrap it up with this one final thing that I was thinking about as I was reading this book. Doc. Yeah, Doc. The prodigy. The prodigy who, it sounded like, if I was reading this correctly, started an internship at the hospital at age 12? Is that the way the timeline lined up? I struggled, I struggled with that prodigy concept, especially when there was so many prodigies among the Lost Boys and all of that. Yeah, I'll just leave that there. If you've read this story, let me know what you think, what your thoughts are. Maybe I'm just too in love with the original story to truly enjoy this one, and I need to be shaken up a bit. So go ahead, shake me up. That's fine. I heart your beautiful faces. Bye.